The soul is a sacred term, but I believe that it has many secular applications. And we're going to get into a little bit of both of those, I think, here with this poem. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another video which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one, the Emily Dickinson playlist. Number two, the poetry discussion playlist. The poem in question today, The Soul Unto Itself. And it reads as such: The soul unto itself is an imperial friend, or the most agonizing spy an enemy could send. Secure against its own, no treason it can fear, itself, its sovereign, of itself. The soul should stand in awe. Now, one of my most common criticisms of Emily Dickinson is sort of like this. The greatest opening lines in all of literature are from Emily Dickinson. Some of the greatest opening couplets in all of literature, Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson's poetry can go downhill fast, especially from an aesthetics standpoint. Now, I am an absolute Emily Dickinson apologist. I think that Emily Dickinson is the greatest poet of all time. Both of those things can be true. There is no perfect poet. Though I believe in that second stanza, Emily Dickinson gets out over her skis as far as the nomenclature is involved, or at least the grammar. It's difficult to follow. But where I think the gold is in this poem, the soul. What does Emily Dickinson mean by the soul? The soul unto itself is an imperial friend, or the most agonizing spy an enemy could send. What could that mean? The first thing that I think you have to accept, the soul is not an imperial friend to someone else. The soul would be an imperial friend to the self. The soul could not spy on someone else. The soul only could spy on the self. So immediately, this poem casts between the soul and the self a great chasm. And it is a great chasm that has one-way visibility. The soul can see the self. The self has no way to spy on the soul. No treason it can fear. The soul does not worry about you being the most agonizing spy an enemy could send against the soul. You have to worry about the soul being the most agonizing spy an enemy could send against you. So let's clear up that opening stanza a little bit. What is it saying? The soul unto itself is an imperial friend, a royal friend. The soul is a royal friend. The soul has its dignity. It's prim and proper. The soul has that regardless. The soul has that baked in. The soul, as there's a couple more cliches I could throw around, the soul is inherently imperial. The soul is dignity, perhaps. Or the most agonizing spy an enemy could send. Now, this does not say that enemies do send the soul, What it's saying is the soul can be such an agonizing spy, it is as if some enemy had sent it against you. Why? Well, remember, there is that one-way road that the soul owns. The soul can come and visit you whenever it wants. You cannot come to visit the soul whenever you want. The soul knows all the bad stuff you've ever done. You've done bad stuff. You've done stupid stuff. You've done selfish things. The soul knows all of them, and it's willing to remind you. So in this first stanza, we have the fact that the soul being present can give us our chutzpah by being an imperial friend, by being dignity itself. Lets us know we are dignified, or in those moments where we forget, the soul remembers all the worst things we've done, and it will remind you. And it, secure against its own, no treason it can fear, that soul doesn't have to worry about you pulling the same cards on it. Now, in these last couple of lines here, this last couplet, itself, it's sovereign. Of itself, the soul should stand in awe. Just wordy, right? Just kind of wordy, kind of out there. But it's saying that the soul is sovereign. This is more. This is more than the soul being separated. This is more than the soul being more dignified than us. This is more than the soul itself being something which is always there to remind us the nasty things we've done. This is saying that the soul is quite separate. Now, I talked about sacred and secular. That is, sort of to put it into different worlds, that would be to say worldly versus religious. For the soul to be sovereign on a religious level, that's a pretty scary idea, isn't it? After all, the soul is what survives us. The soul is what carries on after our death. The soul is what goes to heaven or hell, not us, not in the Christian faith. I think that if I understand things correctly, in the Jewish faith, there is a little bit more of the corporeal to do with the afterlife. And when the dead are risen, it is literally the dead that rise and are reformed. It is, as I understand it, on sort of this mortal plane. But the soul being separate, being sovereign, means that in this incantation here, Emily Dickinson is saying that at the end of this life, when this is out, the soul has the celebration or suffering to do, but you're just dead. You're gone. There's nothing else, nothing more. Darkness. Darkness and nothingness. Is that relieving? Or is it something else? Because if it is something that frightens you, the prospect of closing your eyes one final time and there being no follow-up, if that is something that frightens you, it will frighten you in a secular fashion. Being afraid of dying and there being nothing there. Then many religious folk believe or feel in that sense that their entire life was for nothing, right? There's different takes on this in different types of religion or in atheism, etc. But I can understand that. What Emily Dickinson is saying here is that if that does frighten you and you are the religious type, it's true nonetheless. And don't forget that if you're afraid of that, the soul, the part that lives on after you're gone, it's going to remind you. It's going to make sure you know. It's going to make sure that when you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning for some reason and you just can't sleep, but you're finally starting to doze off, oh, hey, don't forget, I'm the part that survives. So everything you will ever experience, ends whenever. So this is a very interesting poem on a philosophical, religio-philosophical standpoint from Emily Dickinson. And I think that the biggest thing to take from it, maybe, is how you define the term soul. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. There's poetry on the channel every Monday. So if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button and sticking around for more, because as always, I hope to have you back for the next one. We're currently going through Ernest Hemingway's short stories. We just finished up Dubliners by James Joyce. We're making our way through Carrie by Stephen King. All that stuff is going on the channel.